Welcome to the silence before the storm. Welcome to the moment where shadows speak louder than voices. Welcome to the furnace of truth that burns lies to ash. If you've ever felt betrayed, underestimated, or thrown aside, you've arrived. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. Not beneath them, not broken, but building, quietly, ruthlessly, unseen. You've been watching, and now the world is about to watch you. They laughed while they dug the trap, smiling with masks on, spinning stories, painting you as the weak one, the foolish one, the one who'd never rise. They clinked glasses over your name, whispered in rooms you were never invited to, locked doors you were never meant to open. They bet against you, mocked your silence, fed on your patience. And every time you held back, every time you took the higher road, they thought it was fear. They thought you were done. But what they didn't see was the fire building under your skin. They thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say. They thought you were retreating when you were really recalibrating. They saw your absence as weakness, not knowing it was power being refined in solitude. While they celebrated, you calculated. While they lied, you learned. While they gathered against you, you gathered strength. And when they set the trap, with hands too greedy and minds too arrogant, they believed you would walk blindly into it. They believed they were smarter, louder, stronger. They never expected you to watch. Patient, poised, unmoving. You saw everything. You heard everything. And you said nothing. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits. It sharpens its teeth in the shadows. It lets fools build their own collapse. And when the moment comes, it doesn't scream. It steps forward, unchained, undeniable. They set the trap for you and fell in alone. Their words turned against them. Their actions became their downfall. The lies they told twisted into truths they couldn't run from. Because the trap wasn't just something they built, it was something they walked into, step by step, blinded by ego, deaf to warning, drunk on power. They thought they controlled the game, but they never even knew the rules. You didn't have to push, you didn't have to shout. You simply had to let the clock tick. And the trap, the one they made, did the rest. This world loves to tell you who you are before you've even become it. They assign you limits, feed you labels, and hope you'll wear them like chains. But you turned their doubt into discipline. You used every word they threw to build your fortress. You transformed the grave they dug into your garden. And now, while they're buried in the very pit they carved, you are rising, steady, relentless, reborn. They thought the silence was weakness. It was war. They thought your restraint was surrender. It was strategy. And now the same people who laughed at your fall, they're watching your rise with trembling hands and silent mouths. They don't understand how you're still here, how you're stronger, louder, clearer. They don't understand that while they were playing checkers with shallow minds, you were mastering chess in the dark. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the silence you once sat in. Let them feel the cold that once wrapped around your bones. You owe them nothing. Not explanation, not forgiveness, not even anger, just distance and success. Because sometimes the best revenge is letting people live with the truth they tried to bury. Let them drown in the noise they created. Let them try to climb out of the hole they dug, while you build empires from the same dirt they tried to bury you in. You are not the victim. You are the verdict. The final page they never saw coming. The storm after the calm, the roar after the whisper. And when they speak your name now, it won't be in mockery. It'll be in fear. in awe, in silence, because they will remember what they did. They will remember how you watched them with eyes that never blinked, how you walked through fire without screaming, how you stood alone, surrounded by enemies, and never folded. They set the trap for you, but it was never about the trap. It was about your refusal to break. And that's what destroyed them. They underestimated the soul that refuses to quit, the heart that keeps beating, even when the world tries to silence it. They forgot the power of patience, the edge of focus, the weapon of silence. But you remembered. You held the line. You endured. And in the end, they gave you everything you needed to rise. Their betrayal was your blueprint. Their mockery was your motivation. Their trap was your trigger. And now you walk forward, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as the storm that they'll never forget. You see, there's something terrifying about a person who refuses to give up, something unexplainable about someone who takes loss after loss and still walks with purpose, not because they don't feel the pain, but because they own it. They don't run from it. They turn it into fuel, into precision, into prophecy. You became that person. They watched you bleed. They saw you struggle. They convinced themselves you were finished, but they didn't understand that the fall wasn't the end. It was the foundation. Every scar became a map. Every tear became ink for your comeback. And while they were rehearsing your eulogy, you were rewriting your story. You were supposed to disappear, to vanish under the weight of their schemes, to be just another name on the long list of the defeated. But you weren't built to be erased. You were built to endure. And more than that, you were built to evolve, to adapt, to overcome. They played a game of sabotage. You played a game of time. They struck fast. You struck deep. They wanted to humiliate you in front of crowds. You let them, because you understood something they didn't. Public humiliation can become public resurrection. The same eyes that laughed will watch in disbelief. The same voices that mocked will one day echo your name with reverence. And so, you watched them dig. You watched as they crafted the perfect deception, with smiles too wide and hands too dirty. You said nothing, not because you were afraid, but because you were listening, learning, measuring the weight of every betrayal, every false smile, every step they took in the wrong direction. And as they dug deeper, you stood still, until the hole was deep enough. Then came the shift. A silence they didn't expect, a presence they couldn't shake. You walked past the wreckage of what they built, untouched. Not because it didn't affect you, but because it refined you. Because the pain didn't break you, it sculpted you. You didn't escape the fire, you became it. This is not about vengeance, it's about vision. It's about the clarity that comes when you lose everything and realize that you're still standing, that you were never built from comfort. You were forged in rejection, molded by resistance, born in the dark. They thought they were writing your ending, but they were only building your beginning. And now they can't stop it. They can't reverse the trap they built. It's not just a pit in the ground. It's a consequence. A mirror, a truth they never prepared for. Because when people build destruction for others, they always forget the most dangerous variable, the one who survives it. You. There is nothing more dangerous than a person who survives what was meant to destroy them. Because now you carry a truth most will never understand, that you don't have to respond to every insult. You don't have to defend yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You just have to endure and wait and build in silence, because truth doesn't shout, it echoes. And now the echo is everywhere. Their actions are their legacy now, not your downfall. The story that gets told about them won't be about how they won, but how they failed to bury someone who already lived underground, someone who was built in solitude, someone who turned traps into triumphs. There was a time you questioned if you'd ever make it out, if your name would ever mean anything again, if you'd ever walk with confidence again. But that time is gone, and what remains is something unshakable. Not the version of you they thought they could break, but the version of you that was born after they tried. You are no longer reacting, you are rising. And the beauty of it all, you didn't need to pull them down, you just had to keep rising. Because in the end, the trap wasn't your ending, it was their beginning. The beginning of regret, of exposure, of unraveling. You watched them dig their own grave. You didn't have to say a word, because your silence was a sentence, your stillness was a judgment, and your rise, that was the final blow. They underestimated time, underestimated truth, underestimated you. And now, as the dust settles and the silence returns, you walk with something they can never fake, peace. Not the kind that's soft, but the kind that's earned, battle-tested, untouchable. You are not the same. You are not who they betrayed. You are not who they counted out. You are the proof that light doesn't need permission to return, that strength doesn't always come with noise, that the deepest revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't. They set the trap for you. They celebrated too early. They exposed themselves too proudly. And you just stood, quiet, focused, and eternal. You see, there comes a moment, one precise, pivotal moment, when the hunted stops running, when the quiet one, the underestimated one, the forgotten one, stops bending to the world and begins bending the world to them. That moment is now. You no longer walk with hesitation. You no longer move through life seeking validation, because what you've learned is this: there is no power more permanent than the one earned through silence, when you let the chaos pass, when you let the liars speak, when you let the crowd roar, and through it all, you remain still, unshaken, building something they cannot touch. You watch them fall into their own trap, not with joy, but with understanding, because you knew it was inevitable. You knew that people who live in deception eventually trip over their own lies. That betrayal is a blade that always turns on the hand that wields it. You didn't need to sabotage them. You didn't need to manipulate the moment. All you had to do was survive. And now, you've done more than that. You've outgrown the very world they tried to contain you in. You don't need to scream your return. Your presence says enough. Every step you take now is built on earned ground, on late nights and early mornings, on solitude and suffering, on lessons written in pain and patience. You walk now with a weight they can't carry, because you carried it while they watched and laughed and walked away. But you never stopped walking, and that's what makes you different, because the ones who built the trap were playing for applause. You were playing for legacy. They wanted attention. You were becoming unstoppable. You didn't need their spotlight. You were building your own sunrise. You didn't need revenge, because their karma came dressed in silence and consequence. You didn't seek to destroy. You chose to outlive. And that is what unsettles them most. They thought the grave they dug would silence your voice forever. But they were wrong. They gave you depth. They gave you stillness. They gave you the darkness you needed to see the light for what it truly was. And now that you've risen, now that you've emerged from everything they did to you, You understand a deeper truth. You were never buried. You were planted. And this moment, this return, this fire in your chest is the bloom. Let them see it. Let them choke on the silence you once swallowed. Let them marvel at the growth they never believed possible. Because now, everything you are becoming stands in direct contrast to everything they believed you were. And that is justice. They set the trap for you and fell in alone, and the world watched, quietly at first. But now they see it too. They see who was real, who was patient, who endured. Because nothing stays hidden forever. Not lies, not truth, not pain, not power. Now you stand where they tried to knock you down. You breathe freely in a space they tried to suffocate. You speak with a voice they tried to steal. You did not get lucky. You got up, again and again and again. And no matter how many times they twisted the truth, no matter how many shadows they threw your way, they could never erase the one thing that truly matters. You never stopped becoming, even in the darkness, even in isolation, even in the midst of betrayal you kept becoming. And now you are something else entirely. You are not vengeance. You are the result of it. You are not wrath. You are the consequence. You are not returning for war, because you already won the battle they never saw, the one inside. The battle to keep your mind clear. The battle to keep your soul untangled. The battle to keep walking with dignity when every part of you was screaming for revenge. You didn't take the easy path. You took the path that built truth. And now, there's no one who can take that from you. So what now? Now you move with a presence forged in fire. Now you speak with a calm that frightens them more than shouting ever could. Now you live with eyes wide open, no longer naive, but no longer bitter either. Because bitterness is what they carry now. The weight of their own decisions, the sting of watching someone they tried to erase become someone unforgettable. And you carry peace, not because it was handed to you, but because you earned it. And they'll see it in your silence, in your growth, in your joy. Not a joy that is loud, but one that is deep, one that doesn't need to prove anything, one that simply exists. Because the most powerful message you'll ever send is not spoken, it's lived. So live it. Let your results do the talking. Let your peace be the revenge. Let your glow be the echo of every dark day you survived. They set the trap for you, but you turned it into a lesson, a fire, a throne. And when they look back, when they finally stop blaming the world and see the truth staring them in the mirror, they will realize they were never fighting you. They were fighting the idea of someone like you existing, someone they couldn't control, someone who couldn't be broken, someone who knew how to wait. And you waited, and now the world is watching you rise. In the end, you never needed revenge, because life has a way of returning everything to where it belongs. They thought the trap was for you, but the truth is, traps have no loyalty. They catch whoever is careless enough to underestimate their own steps. They spent their days digging, planning, scheming, convinced they were architects of your downfall, when all along they were architects of their own ruin. And you stood there, silent, steady, unmoved, watching them lay brick after brick of their own prison, digging deeper into a grave they swore was meant for you. That is the beauty of patience. It teaches you to endure without striking, to watch without trembling, to trust the weight of truth. The grave they dug was not a hole in the ground. It was the darkness of envy, the rot of jealousy, the hunger of pride, the blindfold of hatred. They carried it inside themselves every day, and you carried light, even when it flickered low. You did not need to match their venom with venom. You did not need to poison your own soul. Because when storms rise, weak trees break on their own. When masts crack, the truth doesn't need your hands to shatter it. And so, they collapse beneath the very weight of the lies they once used as weapons. You didn't just survive, you rose beyond survival. You showed the world and yourself that strength is not measured by how loudly you roar in the moment of battle, but by how calmly you endure while the world tests you. You proved that silence is not weakness, it is strategy. That patience is not surrender, it is victory waiting in stillness. You reminded the universe that light does not chase shadows. It simply shines, and shadows retreat on their own. So remember this, traps will always be set, whispers will always be spoken, shadows will always move in corners where light does not reach. But you have already proven that not every path requires a fight. Sometimes, the greatest triumph is standing tall, while the ground beneath your enemies gives way. Sometimes, the most powerful strike is no strike at all. And now you walk forward, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with an unshakable knowing that no blade forged against you can cut deeper than the wounds they carved into themselves, that no grave dug for you can ever hold your spirit, that no trap meant for your fall can ever capture your rise. They fell in alone, because darkness always devours itself in the end. And you, untouched, unbroken, unstoppable, walk away stronger, freer, and more dangerous than ever, because your silence was louder than their noise, your patience was sharper than their weapons, and your endurance was the very fire that turned their trap into their tomb. You watched them dig their own grave. You never had to push. In the end, what stands tall is not the noise of your enemies, but the silence of their own collapse. They believed they were writing your ending. They believed they were clever architects of your ruin. Yet every brick they placed, every word they whispered, every scheme they designed, was another chain around their own ankles. You did not need to lift a hand. You did not need to shout. You did not need to descend into their darkness. You only needed to wait, to endure, to stand unshaken. Because time has a way of revealing what words cannot. Truth has a way of tearing masks apart without your effort. They dug a hole, convinced it was for your burial. But the soil they scooped carried their own scent, their own bitterness, their own jealousy. They mistook their hate for strength, but hate corrodes from the inside out. They thought they were predators, circling their prey, yet they were prey to their own obsession. And as the days passed, you watched. You didn't panic. You didn't plead. You didn't crumble. You simply stood. And in that stillness, you became untouchable. There is power in silence. There is victory in restraint. There is greatness in letting others destroy themselves with their own poison. They wanted you to rush in, to stumble, to trip into the snare they laid. But you refused to give them that satisfaction. You understood something deeper. Traps do not discriminate. They capture anyone who lacks wisdom. And when the moment came, it wasn't your foot that fell into the pit. It was theirs. They fell, alone, into the very grave they carved. And you walked forward without stain, without chains, without regret. That is what makes your story different. You were not consumed by bitterness. You were not blinded by revenge. You carried your wounds, yes, but you did not let them harden into hatred. You turned pain into patience, silence into strength, and betrayal into clarity. You did not need to destroy them. They destroyed themselves. And as you rise from this chapter, remember, this is not just about them. This is about every future moment where someone will try again. Because they will. Traps will always be set. Words will always be twisted. Envy will always whisper. But you have already proven what you are made of. You are not glass that shatters when handled roughly. You are not a flame that dies when the wind blows. You are stone carved by storms.